Ma'am, we can start.
Yes, Kana. Sushil ma'am, we'll begin now, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Please.
So, good evening and a warm welcome to all the participants of this 7-day faculty development program on literary theory. So, it is with a great sense of gratitude that I begin my introductory note, a gratitude for my college, PSGR Krishnamal College for Women, my department, the management. Gratitude for having given me the opportunity to organize a faculty development program. So at the outset, I would like to begin once again with recording my thanks for the overwhelming response from the participants, because what started as a trickle became a deluge and then a tsunami. So thank you for this overwhelming response. And as I mailed you earlier, all your interest, it only makes our efforts count. So thank you yet again. So talking about the theme of the FTP, that is literary theory. So most of us look at it with a commingling of terror and mystery, and hence the fascination. But I'm sure it's one of the most misunderstood areas also. Very recently, I read this particular quotation. It is from a critic, sorry, I don't remember his name. He goes on to say as to how in recent times, the ambition of literary theory is to simply confuse the readers, and it makes them less imaginative as they are reading literature. But I would not agree with this. And even when my students ask me about literary theory, what is the point, what is the purpose, I always come back to Jonathan Culler and his book, Literary Theory, a very short introduction, where he says how literary theory is an interdisciplinary body of work. It includes many areas, psychoanalysis, semiotics, anthropology, so on and so forth. And the main point that he tries to make there is, he says, literary theory gives you a perspective, but most often we readers of literature, we want somebody to give us a perspective on this perspective. Anyway, I'm not going to go into detail into all those matters. I leave it to the experts. And talking about the esteemed speakers, the panel of speakers that we have for the next 7 days, I would like to record my thanks yet again, because all of them, the moment I asked them, willingly and readily agreed to become a part of the program. And I'm sure they are the impetus and stimulus behind this overwhelming, staggering response. In fact, when I spoke to Dr. Rufus, he said, anytime, madam, any day of your choice. So I know that he is a very busy man. In fact, I spoke to him yesterday night, pretty late. He was telling me that he was returning from his college just then. But then, in spite of all his works, the alacrity with which he accepted our invitation so readily, it shows his magnanimity. Thank you ever so much, sir. And also, talking about the other guests who will be joining us in the days to come, I record my thanks to all of them in advance. And talking about Dr. Rufus, after getting to know him, I acquired his number, and these past few days, I've had the opportunity to look at his WhatsApp status, and it shows what a scholar he is. He's a connoisseur in music, art, and literature, and the kind of information that he updates, it is so meticulous and methodical. In fact, he even gives snippets from his personal diaries that he has written some 28 years ago. And I was simply flabbergasted looking at it. And not just that, a couple of days ago, he had updated his status. It said, anyone in India who was willing to write a diary will just have to contact him. And he said he would send them a brand new diary home delivered. And then, not just that, he went on to say, if only they could show proof that they have utilized the diary and have filled all the pages, he said he would go on to give a grand prize of 10,000 rupees at the end of the year. So this shows what kind of a teacher he is, a real role model, a true inspirer, a staff who can inspire so many teachers like us. We are indeed very privileged to have him amidst us here. And yes, and looking about his diary entries and snippets, I was only thinking that no wonder he is so good at literary theories. He is such a plodder, as I told you, a methodologist. And thank you, sir, for the inspiration. And my best wishes go with all the participants. I really hope that we learn a lot through this academic endeavor. And my introductory note, it would be so incomplete if I do not thank Dr. Sushil Mary Matthews, the head of the Department of English. This past year, we've had a lot of troubles due to pandemic, and in the department, we did not have funds, and we did want to conduct an FDP program, but then we were confused as to how to go about it without the funds. But then ma'am took the initiative. She made all the arrangements, and she was the one who has given us this platform today so that we can conduct this 7-day FDP even without a registration fee. So the entire department and all of us, we owe her a lot. So thank you ever so much, ma'am. And once again, I wish good luck to all the participants. And over to Dr. Sushil Mary Matthews, Head Department of English. She will be giving a formal welcome address. She will be introducing the chief guest as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Madangi, for those good words. Good afternoon, everyone. At the outset, let me take this opportunity to wish you all a very happy and prosperous new year. And let us, as academicians, join hands for the betterment of the student community and the society at large. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to this 7-day faculty development program on literary theory, organized by the Literary and Debating Association of the Department of English from January 5 to 11, 2022. The visionary founders of PSG Krishnamal College for Women, Sri G.R. Govindrajlu and Srimati Chandrakanti Govindrajlu, laid its foundation 6 decades ago, and it has now risen to College of Excellence conferred by the UGC and ranked 6th in the National Institutional Ranking Framework 2021, Ministry of HRD, Government of India. Under the able guidance of Sri G. Rangaswamy and Dr. Nandini Rangaswamy, the institution imparts holistic education with knowledge, skills, and values to equip students with more meaningful and satisfying lives and work roles, which will bring about enabling economic independence, true to its motto, educate to empower. The Department of English, one of the oldest in the institution, was established in 1963 with BA English Literature and MA English Literature in 1961, part-time MPhil introduced in 1983 and full-time in 89, and PhD full-time in 2009 under the affiliation of Bardiyar University. The department works with a vision to hone students to the richness, range, and vitality of the English language and literature. It aspires to provide the most ideal inputs for literary studies from undergraduate to postdoctoral levels on par with the best worldwide. In our strive to excellence, it is fitting for the Literary and Debating Association of our college, under the guidance of Dr. V. Madangi, to organize this FDP. To launch this program, we have with us as our resource person, Dr. Samuel Rufus. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation to enlighten us with your lecture. Dr. Samuel Rufus started his career as lecturer with the American College Madurai and later joined Madras Christian College as assistant professor in 2003. And since then, there has been no looking back. He has created a niche for himself in the literary field, and he has a trail of fanfaring for his academic web blog, rufusonlineblogspot.com. His areas of interest include soft skills and communication skills, post-colonial studies, bioregional studies, literary theory and criticism, UGC net coaching, etc. Dr. Rufus' CV runs to 26 pages, and even to go through it was complex. I can hardly do justice for it on this platform, but here are a few highlights. His academic achievements: he was a recipient of the University Gold Medal in MA English and winner of the President Venkatraman Gold Medal for Academic Excellence, Bharatidasan University. He has authored 4 books, and the titles run: Aura of the Other, Celebrating Alterity in Language and Literature; Essentials of Communication for Advanced Learners of English; Literatures in English; Essentials Soft Skills for College Students. He has edited 7 books, including Mapping Territories, Theory and Praxis in Postcolonial Literatures in English; Explorations in Canadian Literature; Critical Voices, Exploration in South Asian History, Culture and Literature; Contemporary Contemplations on Diasporic Literature. Dr. Rufus has published 22 articles in journals on varied subjects like feminism and third world women, post-colonial rhetoric and poetics of protest, environmental racism as strategy, art of critical reading, blended learning in ESL classroom challenges and opportunities. He has held several positions and responsibilities, under which the important ones are members of different board of studies, member of various doctoral committees. He was a founder, managing editor of Eclectic Representations, the journal of the MCC, and he's a Cambridge University certified examiner for Beck. And he's also a member of the Post-Colonial Studies Association, UK. He has organized guest lectures by several doyens like Dr. Joseph Dorraj, Professor Daniel David, Dr. Armstrong, Dr. Marx, Dr. Rajiv Nath Ramnath, and with renowned novelists Ramabai Espinet and Anita Nair. He's participated in several conferences, workshops, and presented papers. He was invited to talk on several occasions and was also keynote speaker and resource person for innumerable programs. To mention a few, he was invited speaker for the post-centenary Diamond Jubilee International Conference on Resisting Hegemony and Center, Narratives of Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, and keynote speaker for International Conference on Translation. He was a panelist for a discussion on multicultural celebrations. In webinars, he has spoken on existentialism, bioregional studies, literary theory and criticism, politics of language in post-colonial literature, introduction to 20th century and early 21st century literary criticism and theory. His talks offline include a 3-day lecture series on literature and literary studies, narratives of displacement and cultural hybridity. He has been resource person for the refresher course organized by UGC, HRDC of Kannur University and University of Madras. He has conducted 2-day international workshop on literary theories, workshop on communication skills, writing skills for research, new literatures, and literature for the millennium students. He has also served as external expert for academic audit. We are privileged to have such an accomplished speaker amidst us today. Thank you, sir, once again. Let me also take this opportunity to welcome all faculty. Thank you for the overwhelming response, dear academicians. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you all from far and near, faculty across disciplines. It's very heartening to note the thirst for updating knowledge. There is no program without participants, and I want to thank each one of you who have decided to spare your valuable time for the FDP. A special note of gratitude to all the faculty of the Department of English of PSG Krishnamal College, and a special note of appreciation to Dr. V. Madangi, the organizer of this FDP, for all the efforts taken. I would also like to acknowledge the cooperation of the research scholars of our department, and especially Ms. Kavya, who's our technical genie. Thank you all once again, and I'm sure we can all look forward to fruitful deliberations. Thank you. It's over to you, sir. Dr. Samuel Roots.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for those wonderful words. Thank you, Dr. Madangi, Dr. Sushil, and everyone for having invited me to this wonderful FDP. And I feel honored. At the same time, I feel so humbled in the presence of such mighty minds who are going to speak after my. I didn't ask for a particular day, but fortunately or unfortunately, I've been given the choice of the opening batsman. So I'm so happy also that this program has been made free of cost for the participants. That speaks to the love that you have for sharing or disseminating good knowledge across the world. Because Tagore says, no, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments. So knowledge has to be free. And I'm so appreciative of the Department of English for this. And let me begin right away. I'll share my PowerPoints. I have just around 10 PowerPoints. Yeah. Yeah. So I'll be talking about post-colonial performativity and the gaze. Something because post-colonial studies has now become a bit more cliched. Over the years, we have been talking about how we have been oppressed, but there are areas and vistas and avenues for us for an amazing research once we enter into the arena of the new arenas of research where we can delve into. One such area is post-colonial performativity. We all know the term performativity from Judith Butler in Gender Trouble. She talks about performativity. And the concept of the gaze, we all know from Laura Mulvey. And even before that, 1963, Michel Foucault talks about that in Discipline and Punish. So what is performativity? I'll just give you these 5 words in theory, because Dr. Madhangi beautifully said about theory. It offers you a method or a methodology to look at the world. So it is a lens, like, a specs. It is a lens through which you look at the world. So you can put on a feminist lens and look at reality. That will give you a different perspective. You can put on a new historicist lens and look at reality, the world around us. It will give you a different perspective. Then you can put on the post-colonial lens and look at reality. It will give you a different perspective. You can put on the Marxist lens and look at the world, reality. It gives you a different perspective. You can look at the world through the new critical perspective, the structuralist perspective, a deconstructionist perspective, or any post-structuralist theories for that matter. But every theory will give you their perspectives to reconceptualize reality for us. Post-colonial studies is one such vista or avenue that helps us reconceptualize the decolonized world. It helps us to conceptualize and reconceptualize the decolonized world from a different perspective. So theory, simply put, gives us an enhanced engagement with the world around us, enhanced engagement with the reality around us. So till 1949, maybe, we were oblivious to the fact that, women became women. Simone de Beauvoir says, in the 1949 book, The Second Sex, one is not born, but rather becomes a woman. It is a process of becoming. Again, performativity is involved. How does a woman become a woman? Not being, becoming a woman. She talks about, Butler also talks about gender trouble. Gender is cultural, sex is biological. How one becomes a woman. All the cultural impositions on the woman that makes her become all the patriarchal structures imposed on her. She becomes a woman. We talk about The Angel in the House, Country Patmore, Virginia Woolf, a whole lot of feminists who came up after that, right up to Alice Walker, womanism, Stevanism. They offer us different perspectives. Now we understand the levels of subjugation through this lens. But if we were to look at it from a Marxist perspective, a different scenario emerges. So theory, I would personally say, if literature transforms, theory liberates. From what? From my bigoted perspective of reality. I always believed, right, that men or the male, the alpha male, is higher in the hierarchy. But after reading theory, it poo-poos my propositions altogether. So now I have a different conception of reality, reconceptualizing reality. That is why we say, literature transforms. All of us as literature students, till the end of our life, I think all of us are learners and doers of literature. Literature transforms our sensibilities, isn't it? Right? The way we talk, so happy the way, your teachers, colleagues were talking, such kind words they were saying. The way we talk, the way we walk, the way we behave, the way we exchange pleasantries, the way we appreciate others, the way we celebrate life in all its gusto. There is no one near us. So literature transforms, theory liberates, and research, the extension, makes a difference to perspectives. Catherine Belsey uses this phrase, makes a difference. It should make a difference, research. So any research that you are planning to do in the field of post-colonial literature or post-colonial studies in general should make a difference. Now, the 5 postulates of theory I've taken from Beginning Theory by Peter Barry. I'm just going to highlight on the second postulate alone, because I'm going to talk about language, performativity, and the gaze. So politics is pervasive, we know. Language is constitutive, says Peter Barry. Language is constitutive. The rest we know, right? Something that holds good for theory. Now we see the underlying essence of this sentence. Language is constitutive. Forget the other 4 points. The 5 essential postulates of theory that Peter Barry tells us. Just highlight on the second point, which is very, very important for us. David Crystal, in his 1987 or 88 book, Cambridge Encyclopedia of Language, he talks about how language is the dress of your thought. Without language, we don't have access to reality. Without language, we don't have access to communicating with others. Without language, we don't have access to people around us. Without language, this cell phone also becomes of no use. Without language, I can't exist in a culturally conditioned world. So language is constitutive. It means language constitutes the world. Language constitutes reality for me. Language constitutes existence for me. See the power of language. Most of us are oblivious or ignorant of this power behind the language that we use. Just imagine how will I communicate something without language, especially in the post-colonial context. Language assumes great significance, and that is why I will be highlighting on this second postulate that Peter Barry tells us. Language is constitutive. It constitutes our reality. It constitutes our world. Just imagine those 3 blessed words that a young boy tells a young girl: I love you. Reality alters. Just imagine those 5 words, or those phrases that the priest says from the pulpit: I now pronounce you as husband and wife. Reality is altered. Just imagine, abracadabra. Just like that. The priest, she has to just say, or he has to just say, what I know. Till then, they both were separate individuals. Now, he or she invokes the power of language, and then they say, I now pronounce you as husband and wife. The very next moment, reality changes. Now you understand the power of language. I baptize you. Or, I still remember my first, external examiner ship at Manonmanim Sundarnath University in a college there. The ward was there. The research scholar was there. She defended her thesis for about 30 to 40 minutes. And after that, the question hour session was there and everything was over. And finally, I had to confer or tell her that she'll be, henceforth, she can be called Dr. So-and-so. Till then, reality was different. The moment I said that, and I congratulated her, there were tears rolling down her eyes. She was so overjoyed, filled with emotion. Reality has changed for her. All these 5 long years of toil, sweat, has at last come to fruition. The acme, the height of academic life for me has come to fruition at last. When the examiner, external examiner, uses these words, the power of language. But most of the time, we are ignorant or oblivious of this power of language. That is why Achebe says in Postcolonial English, we all know that, I'm not going into that again. He says, I'm not going to stop using English like Ngugi wa Thiong'o does, because Ngugi wa Thiong'o says that he will never use English hereafter because it doesn't reflect my own cultural experience. When I sit down on a pin or on a stone, immediately I yell, Amma. I don't say, oh, mother. When I'm threatened by something, I immediately say, use a native word from the vernacular. Or I cry out, Appa, like that. I won't say, oh, daddy. I won't say that. So, it doesn't carry my cultural experience, my cultural baggage, says Ngugi wa Thiong'o in his late 80s now, still giving his lectures. Like Noam Chomsky, last year, December 6th or 7th, he was giving a lecture, 97 years old. The literary soul doesn't have retirement. So Achebe says, no, I'm sorry, Thiong'o has his way. Thiong'o refused to write in English from then on. He started writing in Gikuyu, but Achebe says, I'm not going to do that because 90+% of the world knows English. So if I have to communicate my angst, what we call post-colonial angst, to the others, I will have to use English as a medium. And I've always felt that more than Soyinka, Achebe deserves the Nobel. How scathing, his vituperative, his attacks, right, on the colonial onslaught, refugee, mother and child, that single poem would tell us. Right. Now, Achebe says, I will write in English, but it will not be the Queen's English. I'll be dismantling the master's house using the master's tools, says Achebe. But there is Audre Lorde who says, how can you do that? Do you think that's easy? Dismantling the master's house using the master's own tools or equipment. Do you think that's easy? What Achebe means is, I'm not going to use the Queen's English. I will use my own vernacular that mingles or mixes. We call it code switching, we call it glossing, we call it structural nativisms, we call it, a whole lot of terms are there. Structural nativization, structural nativisms. Bill Ashcroft talks a lot about this. Right? So he says, I'll be using a whole lot of native vocabulary, punch them into my English. That way, I'm going to dismantle, writing back to the center. Bill Ashcroft says, an empire writing back. But Audre Lorde, she says, the master's tool will never dismantle the master's house. It's not that easy. The master's tools can never dismantle the master's house. Now, we all know that there are strategies and strategies for replacing English. I've taken this term from Bill Ashcroft, Empire Writes Back. Replacing English, abrogation or appropriation, a whole lot of terms you've got for replacing English. Kamala Das says, the language that I speak is mine. Or Walt Whitman says, I sing my barbaric yap upon the roofs of the world. Celebrating Englishes, yes, But is it that easy to dismantle the Queen's English? Now, I just have this expression, language is not a neutral medium. I repeat, language is not a neutral medium. In Derrida's wonderful 1966 essay, Structure, Sign and Play, an essay as a young adult, as a young research scholar, he presented, right, in a colloquium. He talks about how language became discourse. I repeat, how language became discourse in that particular essay. This is the moment. This is the event when language became discourse. He says, so what is language? What is discourse? There is a difference between language and discourse. Language is the broad use that we use for communicating. Hi, how are you? What do you do? Etc. etc. Language is a huge sea. But what is discourse? Language is structured or conditioned into bundles of information or knowledge systems. That is discourse. Knowledge systems that condition our lives every other day. Even the respected, venerated President Dr. Abdul Kalam had to go through this knowledge system. He had to go through his lower kindergarten, upper kindergarten, primary school, first standard, second standard, third standard, sixth, then fourth, fifth, then right, secondary, senior secondary. Knowledge systems that condition our lives. After that, you do your UG degree. Without UG degree, you can't do your PG. Without PG, you can't enter the realm of research. So it is a system. And the discursive apparatus works in every arena of this knowledge framework. That is why Michel Foucault, post-colonial studies borrows heavily, especially Edward Said, borrows heavily from Michel Foucault, who talks about this discursive apparatus, discourse. How a woman is viewed is based on a particular discourse, a patriarchal discourse. So patriarchy looks at a woman from a perspective, knowledge frameworks we have inherited. I still remember in a Bharati Raja movie in the 90s, where a woman is taught to walk, right, with a book in her hand like this, and this eye should meet her left leg, the toe of her left leg, and this eye should meet the toe of her right leg. That's how she should walk with a book in her hand like this. A woman has to walk like that, and she can't wear jeans. She can't wear modern clothes. She has to wear a sari to college. The 80s, right? 80s. And so she has to wear a sari, and she has to walk a certain way, which is considered feminine. And a man has to walk a certain way, which is considered masculine. A woman can weep, but a man cannot weep. Discursive apparatus. Why are you crying like a woman? Discursive apparatus. Why are you laughing like a man? Discursive apparatus at work. So, language is not a neutral medium. This is the main crux of post-colonial studies. Language is not a neutral medium. It can privilege some at the expense of some others. So, language is not a neutral medium that connects with the speaker's intentions. It is colored with the intentions of those in power. This is my expression. It is colored with the intentions of those in power. Here, patriarchy. For example, transgenders or the third genders. How many labels we have for them that are negative? Any one term that is, why do you act like a dash, we say? Why do you do like a dash, we say? Why is that? Because they are nowhere near the power center. So language, Spivak uses this word, othering. Language comfortably indulges in what is called othering. Certain words are privileged, while certain others are less privileged than the others. More, some are more equal than the others. So how does othering take place? We all know that. I'm not going into that in this short time. But what happens as a result of othering? You will find all pejorative words. You know what is the meaning of the word? Pejorative, negative. Pejorative. In post-colonial parlance, we use this term, pejorative labels. He drinks coffee is a good term. But when I remove the word coffee and I say he drinks, the word drinks gets a pejorative label. She is carrying a bag. It's a neutral sentence. But when I say she is carrying, the word carrying attains another coloring altogether. That is a pejorative label. So language also carries a pejorative label to it, colored with the intentions of those in power. Some are venerated and some are othered. That Spivak tells us. You know what happens when some are othered? All the negative words, the bad words that we use in society will be only based on the othered. For example, I have seen, in movies, in the cinema, in TV serials, or in mainstream media, even innocuously, students talk to themselves or between themselves, innocuously sometimes, innocently sometimes. Colored. What are the words they use? Come on, at home also we do that, no? Like when we want to scold a sibling, we use the word pig. What did the pig do to us? Pavam, one pig is there somewhere safely doing. Why do you want to use the word pig to scold another person? Donkey, we say. Why do you want to donkey? Eruma madu, buffalo, we say. Why do you want to take a buffalo to scold? Because a buffalo or a donkey or a dog, patti, nai, we say, dog. Why? Because the dog cannot speak for herself. A cow cannot speak for herself. A donkey cannot speak for herself. They have been comfortably othered. In othering, one is always silenced. And in othering, many things also happen. Misrepresentations happen. Misreportings happen. Silences happen. Stigmas happen. Stereotypes happen. Because of misrepresentation. We don't know whether a dog loves bones at all. But just because one dog, was busy munching a bone, we generalize dogs love bones. Who said? Did you ask the dog? Did the dog speak for herself? No. I, in a position of power, that's why the word, no, it is colored with the intentions of those in power. I am close to power. That's why Michel Foucault says, no, power, knowledge, discourse. Power and knowledge are always connected, as we all know. And he also says, no, two powerful media through which this knowledge is disseminated is the realm of academia and the realm of medicine. Whatever I've learned in school, 1, 2, sir, miss will ask. 2, miss will say. Right? 5, 2, sir, 10, miss. 4, 8, sir, 32, miss. 5, 4, sir, 25, miss. Stand up on the bench. 5, 4, sir, 5, 4, sir, stand up on the bench. Stand up on the bench. Stand up on the bench. There will be a tweak. I don't know if it's happening now. In the 80s, when we were students, that was the privilege of teachers to tweak our ears, twitch our ears, and give beatings on the knuckles. Until we become a part of the system, the ideological state apparatuses try to reinforce this knowledge framework in us. So power, knowledge, and discourse, they condition our reality. That is what Michel Foucault says, and that is what Edward Said talks about in his Orientalism, misconceptions about the Orient. So when this othering happens, automatically or spontaneously, there is a derogation that happens. Derogatory terms we use about the other. Why do you talk like an Asian? Why do you behave like the pirates of the Caribbean? Why do you behave like, all pejorative labels? Why? Because they have never been close to power. In other words, post-colonial studies uses one word again and again. The word is agency, agency. Agency means the ability to act autonomously. That is agency. A woman is denied agency. A man is denied agency. That means the ability to speak for herself, the ability to come out with a. That's why, in 1988 essay, Can the Subaltern Speak? Gayatri Spivak talks about this. They cannot speak for themselves. Someone has to represent. Please remember, I can never represent even my wife. I can never represent even my mother. I can never represent even my child or anybody, or my friend for that matter. I'll be doing a great injustice if I do that. Because my perception or understanding of the other is always biased. They should be allowed to speak for themselves. Now, coming to the next word. So what are the intentions of those in power? We saw the previous one. Intentions colored by the intentions of those in power. One is to validate, authenticate hegemony. We all know what is hegemony. Antonio Gramsci tells us this. Hegemony is domination with your consent. Airtel tells you 30 days validity or 84 days validity. After the validity period is over, what you have to do is you have to recharge. Otherwise, you will get a lot of calls or messages. Anbanda vadikiyalare. Dear customer, recharge to avoid losing your number. Hegemony. They dominate you with your consent. And we fall into that domination scenario, hegemonic scenario, 1929, if I'm right? Civilization and its Discontents by Sigmund Freud, where he talks about this. Civilization has given rise to discontent because it dominates you with your consent. You are not free. I just told my second MA students yesterday in class. Even if you want, can you stand here and dance the way you do at home? They were smiling, they were laughing. You can't. At the Four Road Junction, no, opposite our college. Even if you want, can you stand there and dance near the traffic police? No, you can't, because you'll be immediately arrested. That means you are born free, but everywhere you are in chains. Domination with your consent. The next word is to instill conformity, something that Viktor Frankl also tells us again. Either you conform means imitate slavishly what the other person does. Imitate slavishly what society does. Imitate, slavish imitation. That's why Nietzsche uses the word slave morality. Christianity follows the principles of slave morality. The priest asks them to stand up, everyone stands up. Slave morality, conformity. So this is what those in power do. How do they do that? Through discourse. Conformity. One is conformity, where you imitate, or totalitarianism, where you are forced to imitate. One is, these are two words that Viktor Frankl uses. I'm just taking these words from. One is conformity, where you faithfully imitate another person, or the next one is totalitarianism, where you are forced to do whatever you don't want to do. Right. And how do they carry out their intentions? Through the process of othering that we discussed and the process of the gaze. These are the two terms I would like to discuss. The second two, the gaze and performativity. I've asked this question in just another lecture that I gave a few weeks back about the gaze. Have you ever thought about this? An open challenge to all of us literary souls. I call all of us literary souls. You and me and we and us, literary souls. Have you ever thought about this? Down the ages, all of literature that we've been doing, history of English literature or American literature. Have you ever seen a woman or a girl write a poem for a man? that is prescribed for you. Prescribed for you in the syllabus. Very rarely, maybe. Have you ever come across a poem written by a woman to a man saying, "Oh, my dear love, valediction forbidding mourning, my darling boy, don't cry. I'm going out. We are like the pair of compasses, my dear boy. I am the girl. I'm going out. I'll be crossing seas and rivers and oceans. But one day I'll come back. You should be chaste like anything. You should never look at somebody in the opposite house. You should be chaste. You should have, a whole lot of qualities that are endowed on a boy. I will be coming back soon. Valediction forbidding mourning, a valediction forbidding weeping. Have you ever come across such a poem? Maybe it's an open challenge. Right? Has any such poem been prescribed for us? Why is it always mono or one way? Why is it not reciprocal? All the poems, prothalamian, epithalamian. Right from there, let's come down. My last batches. Or see all the poems, right, up till the 21st century that have been prescribed for us for a change. Why not a poem by a woman to a man? The gaze is the culprit. Maybe you can analyze. You can also think about the reasons. These wonderful, faculty development programs are meant to make us think. I tell my students this: stop, think, reflect. You will find the answers. During the middle of my lecture or a particular professor's lecture, you write a word, stop, think, and reflect. You read a storybook, you read a novel, you read a book. Suddenly you come across something beautiful. Stop, think, reflect. Stop, think, reflect. You will find the answers. So you can, think and reflect on this aspect also. Why not from a woman to a man? One of the main reasons is the gaze. The gaze is always focused from the better in the hierarchy to the lower in the hierarchy. So it's like this: the better in the hierarchy or the privileged in the hierarchy always gives the gaze. In movies, you would have found. Now, I'm not exaggerating when I tell you this. In movies, down south especially, or in Hindi movies also. I still remember when I was in school, I watched this 1942 a love story, a very famous movie. I was in my +2 then. Right? 1942, a love story. The gaze. He will look at her. She will never look back. She will have to bend down her head in shyness, what Andrew Marvell will call coyness. Coyness means pretending to be shy. Like this, she can never look back. Every movie in the past, most of the movies at least, you will find the gaze is directed, not reciprocated. The gaze is focused on the woman, or when we talk about the colonial gaze, it is directed from the subject to the objectified. The objectified is the East, the Orient, a construct. So here, Laura Mulvey talks about the gaze. Michel Foucault talks about the gaze, biopower. When he talks about the different kinds of power, pastoral power, sovereign power, he talks about biopower, the gaze, how it conditions the other. In some movies, you would have found people from the lower caste, the member from the higher caste or so-called higher caste, they'll be looking at them. The next moment you'll find they will hide themselves and rush away. The gaze. The gaze, in other words, is hegemonic, domination with your consent. The colonial gaze did exactly that. When the gaze dominates you with the power of the eyes, I'll just quote a beautiful line from John McLeod, who gave us a beautiful book. If you are interested in foraying or foraging much into post-colonial studies, you would love this book, Beginning Post-Colonialism by John McLeod, where he says, colonialism suggested certain ways of seeing. You have to see like this. In Mulk Janan's, one of his most memorable characters, Munu, he does exactly the same. He acts like the English. He puts a cap like the English. He wears a wristwatch like the English. He speaks in BBC English. He wears a pipe on. He smokes a pipe. Wears cut shoes. The exact mannerisms, mimicry that Homi Baba talks about. The gaze. What does it do? It objectifies the other. So othering is done through the gaze, where the other becomes passive, docile objects. A phrase from Michel Foucault, docile bodies or docile objects. We all know an object cannot speak for itself or herself. Someone else has to give it the term. In Robinson Crusoe, for example, you will find he is marooned in an island. In that island, you find there is a man, there is a person there in the island. And he names that person. What does he name that person? He names him Friday. Why does he name him Friday? Because he found him on a Friday. Naming becomes a political act. So an object cannot speak for himself or herself or itself because they have already been authenticated, valorized, objectified by somebody else already. That is why language is always, for example, the word black. Let's be very honest to ourselves. When I talk about two words, white and black, which color would you prefer? In general parlance, when you talk about skin, take the advertisements that you find in the classified columns in the newspapers. I want not wheatish also. I want a fair-skinned girl, but this boy would be as dark as could be. But he would want a fair-skinned or fair-complexioned girl. The gaze. In movies, Laura Mulvey says, the gaze always focused on the woman's parts which objectified her. So that means, apart from these objectifications, she doesn't have an identity of her own. The same way in colonial studies, you find the colonizer objectifies the colonized as feminine, as weak, as effeminate. These are the terms I've used from John McLeod's book and Edward Said's Misconceptions on the Orient, Orientalism, 1978 book. Effeminate. The Orient is weak and effeminate. They are sexually exotic. They are exotic. All terms that I use on the oppressed because of the power of the dominant gaze. And the next one is the word performativity. Maybe, when we have the time for discussion, you could also talk about how the gaze could be reversed, because we have what is called the dominant gaze. The dominant gaze in the sense, it could be the male gaze or the colonial gaze from the post-colonial perspective. So if I could retune 1949 Simone de Beauvoir's wonderful line, that powerful line, one is not born, but becomes a woman. Here we could say the same applies to the colonized. One is not born a colonized, but becomes a colonized. How? Through the processes that we have acquired over the years. Look at our songs that have valorized and venerated and celebrated whiteness. Do you think we have been doing that in the past? No, not until the colonizers arrived. But there might be another question. Sir, don't you think even in the past, even before the colonizers arrived, we had hierarchies based on color? I would say yes. I will also say no. There were hierarchies. Maybe there were hierarchies based on color. But let us also make a note of this, that valorization and authentication comes from those in power. When it is written down, it becomes historical. When it is written down, it goes into posterity. The West wrote the East. The West literally wrote the East. That was my thesis all about. My thesis was on post-colonial studies, James Fraser, how he has demoted or committed a great error in his anthropological accounts when he portrayed the East, especially with regard to Indians. He has portrayed them as uncivilized, barbaric, lacking in taste, lacking in refinement, exotic, wild, all things that they don't want, they other it and misrepresent. For example, I don't like something. What do? I immediately start misrepresenting that person. I don't like, for example, no, that person is dangerous. That person is very bad. Be careful. Even before Ian Fleming could land in India, in Mumbai, I think way back in the 1960s, even before his plane could land in India, his companions there on board the flight told him, be careful of your watch, your wallet, your belongings, because there might be thieves. See how preconceived notion. Just because there is a thief in one part of the world doesn't mean. Now, this is why Derrida says, don't totalize. Because one student in the second MA class is mischievous doesn't mean everyone in the class is mischievous. Totalization was a tool of the colonizer. Another word for totalization is essentializing, essentialism. I totalize another person based on one person's character. I totalize everyone in the second MA class as mischievous. Now, the next word is performativity. Performativity is, coming back to Judith Butler, where she says it happens in the actions that I do every day, in the performance. In the performance lies my identity. One is not born, but becomes a woman. Performance. To perform means, we all know, the word perform connects with the word act. So when I act, I'm doing theater. When I do theater, I'm very conscious of what I do. Come on, when you are on a stage, just imagine you are on a stage somewhere, right? And you have been asked to do a particular role in As You Like It. Shakespeare says, no, all the world's a stage, and all men and women are mere actors and actresses. Everyone donning the roles. We have our entrances and exits. If I were to play a part on stage, how conscious I would be, when I do that part? How careful I would be when I do that part? Performing, acting. That's why Austin uses the word speech, act, performance. Perform the role of a particular person that is expected of me in society. That is performativity. And being conscious or aware of my role in that performance. Now, we all know this, the policy of exclusion and marginalization that othering does to an individual. Spivak's term, othering, the policy of exclusion and marginalization. Safely, they did that. Exclusion from what? Exclusion from speaking for themselves, from knowledge, exclusion from power. If you look at all the songs from the Caribbean, I think they are more vociferous than us. They have celebrated brownness, blackness, more vociferous than us. And I think it's time that we also take up the cudgels and blow to smithereens this Westocentric knowledge framework. When I ask my students, who's your favorite singer? They immediately say, "Sir, Justin Bieber, sir," or Britney Spears, or favorite musician, or favorite band. They always have this craze for the West. Hey, don't you have any Ilayaraja or A.R. Rahman or how many wonderful, amazing musicians you have? Hey, Ilayaraja is a copycat, sir. Just because, right, you can't speak well of a person, how easily you exclude them from this privilege and see is a copycat, he has copied. How we demean our own color, our own people, our own flesh and blood, our own kindred based on a Westocentric paradigm. Kalia. I've seen this word used in some segments of society. Kalia, crow. She is a Kalia. No, they tease a person based on the color. Why? Westocentric templates that have always valorized, venerated, and authenticated white as the rubric of excellence. Vellavi vachudha veluthahala. The song, a very famous song, maybe 10 years ago, Adikalam, that movie. Vellavi vachudha veluthahala. The boy has to sing for the girl. And the girl has to sing what? Karupudan yanakku pudicha color. For her, blackness is her favorite color. And you'll know that song, that Malavika, I think this happened 20 years ago, if I'm right. That song was very famous. Where she will, because the male lead character happens to be wheatish in color, she will, and all of them in that song, will be dressed in black. Have you ever seen, that's the power of the gaze, have you ever seen a man saying, Karupudan yanakku pudicha color? No. Exclusion. From what? Knowledge frameworks. And that is why othering, what does it? It humiliates the marginalized. I'll talk about another beautiful word in the coming slides. It's called microaggression that happens. Now, the second point is resulting in misrepresentations and stereotypes. Now you know how misrepresentations happen. When I speak for another person, especially if I don't like that person or disregard that person, I can misrepresent them. Not with one person, I can misrepresent them with everyone else. And when I misrepresent this person to everyone else, it becomes a stereotype. A stereotype is hence a constant repetition, a knowledge that you avail because of a constant repetition. The Jews are money extortionists. The pirates, the Caribbeans, are always pirates. They are thieves. Mafia, Italians. You have associate certain. In India also you say, some. How demeaning. Stereotypes are born because of a coercive repetition. COERCIV. Coercive, constant repetition of the greatness of something or the awfulness of something. The awesomeness of something or the awfulness of something. Right. So this is what we were discussing earlier. Gaze is the lens through which the other is depicted and interpreted. The other, from Spivak's point of view, is the other, the person who cannot speak for themselves, so who are stigmatized, silenced, or marginalized. So gaze reduces the other to a mere body. The word that Michel Foucault would use is docile bodies. An object, objectified. You must have known that Tamil song this says, Sandaikku Vanda Kili. It's a good old song in the 80s. Sandaikku Vanda Kili. Kili means the girl has to come to the market. What is that market? The matrimonial market. Sandaikku Vanda, it's a song that valorizes patriarchal conditioning in society. Valorizes means authenticates patriarchal conditioning in society. And gaze also contributes No, we are talking about the gaze from a post-colonial perspective here. What does gaze do? It contributes to the interpolation. Two words I want you to maybe note it down or have it in mind. One is iteration, Iteration. Iteration means constant repetition of the greatness of something or the badness of something. Iteration. And the next one is interpolation. This is a word used by Louis Althusser, the guru of Michel Foucault, and Foucault also. What is interpolation? When I don't wear a helmet, when I don't have my driving license, or when I don't wear a seat belt in a car, or in a bike, I don't wear a helmet, don't have a driving license, don't have my RC book, I go on my bike. Suddenly, I see a police officer down there on the street. What do? I become aware. I become very conscious. Of what? Of my lack. I lack something. I become very conscious of that. That moment, when I become conscious or aware, that is the moment I become interpolated into a dominant discourse. Interpolated subject. So interpolation means the moment I become aware of my lack and I slavishly submit to a power, what do? Either fight, or with nervousness on me, I fight, or flight, escape. Right? We have seen most of the guys, when they don't wear a helmet, when they see the police from a long distance, immediately a U-turn and they'll take another route. Gaze contributes to the subject's interpolation. Now, I want you to associate this with the concept of the colonial gaze. We don't have much time, so I'm being a bit more concise. Right. Gaze gaze reduces the other to a mere object. And yeah, this is what we saw. And performativity, just a little definition for you as a takeaway. Performativity is a repetition of acts, an imitation or miming of the dominant conventions. We discussed Simone de Beauvoir's becoming a woman. Similarly, a man. David Crystal talks about this, how we have divided female emotions and male emotions, or men's emotions and women's emotions. He says a woman, when a baby is given to her, handed down to her, a baby, what she does? She will, he imitates it. He was here in Chennai, 2007, that great legend. He was the British Council. So, he says when a woman is given a baby, the way she cajoles the baby, it's completely different, he says. The language of women, right, is different. Like this, and like this, and the way they enunciation, and the way they connect with a baby. The same you give to a man, he says, that's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, this is what we mean by becoming. He was saying it innocuously. He was talking about, the difference in the language of men and women. He says, women give a lot of importance to relationships and emotions. They use a lot of hedges. He says hedges means a lot of questions. For example, the man wouldn't have even asked one question, but 100 questions will come from there. Where did you go? Why so late? What is the time now? With whom were you talking? No, I heard that office got over by 6 itself. Now it's 7:30. A lot of questions. From this side, no questions. So hedges. Hedges means a lot of questions. And they use a lot of interjections, emotional reactions. They use a lot of, enunciations. Men's talk, women's talk, he says. David Crystal, you should read this wonderful encyclopedia of language, 1987 or 88, I'm not sure, but it's very cheap. It's a huge book, bigger than the A4 size that we have, full with color, but around 320 odd pages, rupees only. You should buy it and read how he demarcates the language. But he says men, when they speak, it's completely different. They are not interested in emotions, enunciations, or interjections or hedges. They don't ask questions. They have just three things in mind. He says, control, status, and independence. They always want to. They always want to feel that they are independent. David Crystal says this. They want to always talk about their status. I know this MLA, this MP, this vice chancellor, this person, and I am in control, total control, like that. That is David Crystal. But here, Simone de Beauvoir says one becomes a woman because of the patriarchal condition. The same way one becomes a subject, a colonized subject, and we look down. Shyam Selvan in his wonderful story, he says, how a black looked down on his own fellow countryman. A disabled or a physically challenged young boy, a black, because he was physically challenged, right? He couldn't walk. He had to employ a white boy, right? This man, he's a man. He had to employ a white boy, a little boy who didn't have a means for living. So he said, why don't you work for me? I'll give you some sustenance. All the blacks in the place, they came around and they said, how dare you employ a white boy? No, that is not the norm. Normatives, the basic givens are different. Performativity, how I am made to acquire a set of values that is not mine, and I feel in subjugation, domination with their consent. The craze that we have, be it in our food, when we take a selfie, have you ever taken a selfie with the local porridge or cooler that we eat, with the Domino's pizza? Wow. With the KFC? Wow. A BMW car at the back? Wow. An ambassador car at the back? Hey, no. Ask him to move the car. Values that enable performativity in the colonized. Just points for some rubrics for our thought. And so I gave you this example, no? Just a second point here quickly. Performativity is the concept that language can function as a form of social action and can effect a change or a complete transformation. After I say you are awarded the doctorate, hereafter you'll be called a doctor of philosophy, the title changes. From then on, she becomes doctor or he becomes a doctor. The title changes. Till then, they were two individuals. Now, from now on, they become husband and wife. Performativity, and they have to perform the roles. As husband, don't you think you are the husband? Why don't you behave like a husband? Don't you think you are the wife? Can't you behave like a wife? Don't you think you are a professor? Can't you behave like a professor? You are the principal. Why don't you perform the role of a principal? All of us are actors and actresses, performing our roles and doing our entrances and exits. How do we perform? Is it because we like to do it, or are we real puppets in the hands of somebody else? My language has 1,000 words for the word love. My vernacular, my language, my Tamil, or my Malayalam, or my Telugu, or my Hindi, or my Urdu, or Oriya, or Marathi, Gujarati, Kashmiri, Punjabi, any language, we have layers and layers of words for the word love. But in English, there is only one word. I love my nation. I love my father. I love my mother. I love my dog. I love ice cream. I love my country. I love my school. I love my college. I love cell phone. Only one word. But still, we love the love of the English language. That is because we have always been puppets asked to valorize or authenticate from a Westocentric framework, says Edward Said. This valorization, this authentication should come from within. That's why Carl Jung says, no, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. The other day in a native restaurant, when I went there, they were playing some hi-fi English songs in a local restaurant. I don't want to name. It's a popular brand. It's available all over. But I told them, see, you have a lovely name, but why these songs? Have you seen in advertisements, even in today's newspaper, Omega watch or Raymond's or any brand? Just look at the advertisements in the visual or the print media. How many are white-skinned or fair-skinned? How many are dark-skinned? This craze for fairness or whiteness, where did it come to us from? Performativity, post-colonial performativity. Yeah, and that is where this impactful word that we all know, but maybe we have not been aware of that, microaggression. It's a word that connects with innocuous, innocent remarks that we make. I thought you were a bit fair. When I saw you on your profile picture, you looked so fair, microaggression. But when I see you directly, you don't look that fair. Microaggressions. I read out those lines for you. Remarks, questions, or actions that are hurtful and cause pain because a person is discriminated against or subject to stereotypes. When are you going to get married? This microaggression. I wish that you get a fair boy. Microaggression. I wish that you get a fair girl. Give me a baby. The mother-in-law says, give me a baby who is fair. Give me a boy, not a girl. Microaggression. How many instances of microaggression that we have conveniently ignored in our lives? When are you going to get married? The most disrespectful word that a person could ever ask a girl or a boy. The most disrespectful word that a person could ever ask a person. When are you going to get married? Hurtfulness because of these microaggressions. And then if they get married, when are you going to get a child? Microaggressions. Or, I'm not blind. Microaggression. Why do you want to humiliate a visually challenged person? When you use this word, I'm not blind, microaggression. I'm not deaf. Do you know what it means to be a deaf person? Microaggressions. I'm not lame. Microaggressions. The colonizer gave us these terms. In Mrs. Dalloway, you'll find these examples of microaggression. Virginia Woolf. She uses the word nincompoop, a silly Indian girl. Why do you behave like a nincompoop? A silly Indian girl. Microaggressions. And who does this? Why is it done? It is done innocuously, but these are done by those in power in the hierarchy. And because of that, stereotypes are begotten. Now, I just want to finish with this wonderful little lines from Jack Gilbert, The Forgotten Dialect of the Heart. Just, around, it's a huge poem, but I've taken just 6 lines. Right? How astonishing it is that language can almost mean, and frightening that it does not quite. I repeat, how astonishing it is that language can almost mean and frightening that it does not quite. It almost means, but it doesn't. My language should reflect my love, my desires, my anxieties, my pains, my longings, my groanings, my sighs, but it doesn't. The English that I speak doesn't, he says. Right? How astonishing it is. Now, this grace for the way that English is spoken. You speak good English, microaggression. We don't own the English language. You look very fair, microaggression. Even the word fair there, you look very fair. It's a microaggression. No, how astonishing it is that language can almost mean and frightening that it does not quite. We say bread, and it means according to which nation? French has no word for home, and we have no word for strict pleasure. Language is not an innocent, neutral medium. The moment we are aware of the politics in language, that is the moment we will also be open to the inner eyes, the inner voice of the heart, and start celebrating what is uniquely our experience. When I write down in English, there will be a mix of Amma. I was so happy for the translator of Perumal Murugan's Rising Heat in English. The translator has done wonderful justice. I was sharing it in a reading group last year. Mamoy. The translator didn't want to translate that untranslatability. You can't translate. The word mamoy that she says in Tamil cannot be translated into English. However, better you want to express the word chutney or Salman Rushdie says so chutnification. However, better you want to express the word idli or dosai or vadai in English, you can't. How can you describe the word vadai or sambar in English? Pongal in English? No word will come here. So, as subjects, we have a great responsibility on us. It's not celebrating or venerating the outside and forgetting what is ours, the inside. That is one reason why I say, Wordsworth cannot be called a nature poet, in the sense from deep ecological frameworks. Because in Daffodils also you find the word gaze, because of lack of time, I'm finishing. Right? In Daffodils, you find, I gazed and little thought what wonder the show to me had brought. Gaze means what? I objectify a daffodil, a flower. For what? For my own selfish desire and joy. A gaze is one way. I've shared this with my students in classes also, right? You go to nature, you take a photograph of the Aruvi or the Kuruvi or the Yanai, the beautiful elephant is there. You take a photo of her, put it in your camera, come back. Have you ever wondered what the elephant would have thought from her perspective? Would the elephant want to even respond or reciprocate? That means you objectified her. Wordsworth here objectifies nature. When you objectify something, you are not in a position of integration at all, integrative oikos that Dr. Nirmal Selamani talks about. You are in a hierarchical oikos where you want to express your domination over you exploit nature for your own selfish pleasures. Sorry for those of you who love daffodils, but still, from a post-colonial perspective, the word gaze cannot be better explained. Because, for eco-criticism, I've seen some students use daffodils as a wonderful poem that celebrates nature. No, it doesn't celebrate, it exploits nature rather. So the moment we look within, that is the moment we'll start celebrating our unique voice. And the moment we start celebrating our unique voice, we look at everyone around us as people to be celebrated, not necessarily celebrated, but venerated and admired for the language that they speak. It's not theirs, but mine and ours. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We can just take one question because it is almost time. Sir, we have Mr. Prabhakar. We have Mr. Prabhakar, sir. He has
Yes.
sent, how do we apply the concept of this performity and gaze in the Indian context? Is it possible? Can we apply it to Dalit studies? If so, how, sir?
Wonderful question. I would say a very wonderful question. Yes. To Dalit studies, yes. Especially in the context of movies that I said. Take a spate of movies that have come up recently or texts that have come up recently, right? Where they are always objectified based on what? The parameters of those in privileged positions in the hierarchy. So how the gaze affects the subject here. They lose what is called their agency. I told you that, we discussed the meaning of the word agency, the ability to act autonomously. No, here they can't. They can't respond. So how the gaze results in a perpetuation or a continuation of these stereotypes over a period of time, because the gaze cannot be reciprocated. The gaze cannot be given back, be it Dalit studies, or be it Aboriginal studies, be it First Nation studies, be it, any studies that deals with subjugation, women's studies, right? Feminist criticism also. There is abundant scope for using performativity, how they are conditioned to perform certain actions. Sudhamurthy is the best example. I don't know if any other college has her in the syllabus. Please, let's not always think about these Alice Walkers and others. There is a Sudhamurthy who's waiting to be celebrated. I would say she's one of the best to have ever come to have blessed the literary scenario in India. She talks about a different brand of feminism called social feminism, not socialist feminism. Social feminism, how feminism connects with the masses, how gaze happens, performativity happens. And we have included her, we have prescribed her in the syllabus here in my institution. So, there is abundant scope. I'm so happy for this question. There is abundant scope for exploring more on the subject of performativity and the gaze, especially with regard to Dalit studies or, all the marginalized studies for that matter. Thank you for that question.
Sir, thank you, sir. We have lots of questions, sir. Maybe just one more, sir.
Yes,
we have Mr. Vignesh. He wants to know the connection between colonialism, post-colonialism, and cultural studies, sir. He says, is there any perception presently in post-colonial studies towards cultural studies?
Yes, there is a kind of a beautiful link between culture studies and post-colonial studies, because culture studies from a grounded framework, it doesn't go into the hegemonic enterprise, right? It critiques the dominant. That is where you have, be it cultural materialism or new historicism or any of these fields, right? You'll find a critique of the dominant. So there is an extra, heteroglossia was that. Mikhail Bakhtin would talk about the polyphony, a dialogism or a heteroglossia or the carnivalesque that you find in culture studies. And that is why almost the same you find in post-colonial studies also. There are lots of convergences, interpolations. There are also books written on the subject. I can also give you a few. I can also email them to you. There is a lot of interpolations. Yes, good question.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. We do have a lot of questions, but we are running short of time. So thank you so much, sir, for your contribution today. And over to Dr. Lavanya, Associate Professor from the Department of English, for the vote of thanks.
At the outset, I would like to place on record my gratitude to our founder trustees, Shri G.R. Govindarajulu and Srimati Chandrakanti Govindarajulu, who made women empowerment a reality in this region. My profound thanks are due to the Managing Trustee, Mr. Rangasamy, Chairperson Dr. Nandini Rangasamy, Secretary Dr. N. Yashoda Devi, Principal Dr. S. Nirmala for spearheading women's education to greater strides ahead. I wholeheartedly thank Dr. Padmavati, Dean Academic Support and Alumni Relations, and former head of the department for guiding us and mentoring us throughout. My sincere thanks are due to the resource person of the day, Dr. Daniel Rufus, Assistant Professor of English, Madras Christian College, Chennai, for enlightening us on the post-colonial theory. Sir, in a lucid manner, you put across the various concepts of post-colonial theory, such as dismantling colonial powers, the difference between language and discourse, the concept of othering, hegemony, gaze, performity, interpolation, and microaggression in a very interesting and a simple way so that every one of us could understand the difficult concepts. Your lecture definitely made us to think and reflect on the interconnection between society and literature. Our perspective on literary theory has definitely altered proposition from a difficult concept to an endearing subject after listening to you. Thank you for throwing light on this difficult concept to us, sir. Thank you very much. I thank our head of the department, Dr. Sushil Mary Matthews, for her immense support and encouragement to conduct this faculty development program. My special thanks are due to Dr. V. Madangi for organizing the 7-day faculty development program on literary theory on behalf of Literary and Debating Association of the Department of English. Thank you, Madangi, for giving us an opportunity to listen to an erudite scholar like Dr. Daniel Rufus. I thank all the faculty members of the English Aided Department and the Self-Financing Department of English for your presence and for the support rendered. I thank all the participants for the enthusiasm and interest you have shown in this faculty development program. Thank you all once again.
Sir, thank you so much once again, sir. Your lecture has set a perfect inaugural note. There's so much to take home. I'm sure all the faculty will use it. They will use it in their classes, and their students will also be benefited, sir. There's so much scope for research too in whatever you have said. I hope they apply it in their research. Thank you so much, sir.